Okay. Oh wait, I gotta turn this on. Okay, we're back. Hey guys, Byron here, aka Slay Beast, and today we are going to be talking about lighting. Specifically, 4 things that you're probably not doing right now that will help take your lighting game to the next level. So let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, guys, so we are in Cinema 4D, and I have a very simple scene set up here. I have a 3D scan that I have made into a Redshift proxy. And I turned it into a proxy because I don't want Redshift to have to think about any extra information that it doesn't have to calculate. So doing the proxy, it's already pre-calculated, if you will, that information to an extent. So it's just one less thing it has to think about. But it's overkill for this for sure. But it's just something that I like to do as a practice. And then I have a couple textures on here. Very simple. A couple of triplanar textures because this guy is not UV'd and I did not want to UV it. So I just have a few triplanar textures on there with a diffuse color and reflection roughness. So before we jump in here, I just want to cover 2 things. One, the first thing that I like to do is I like to go into settings, and to get into settings, I hit Control B. I like hotkeys, so if you are unfamiliar with hotkeys, a lot of the hotkeys in Cinema, for that, it's Control B to pull up your render settings, but you can also go up here and hit the render settings button. So with this pulled up, the first thing I like to do when lighting a scene is I go to Globals and I turn off this little bugger right here, this default light. That's on by default. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Byron, whenever you create a light in Redshift, it automatically turns that off. So why turn that off? Well, you are correct. It turns it off whenever you create a light, but I just like to know that there's nothing else influencing my scene, because if I hit render right now, we don't see anything. And that's what we want when we're starting out lighting a scene. If I turn on my default light and I refresh, we now get the default light lighting the scene. And there have been instances in the past where I've brought in a production ready, a production approved lighting and from another scene, and I had the lights turned off and the default light was on, and it was just causing a little bit of confusion. But it doesn't really happen that often, but I just like to know that there's nothing else affecting my scene as far as the lighting goes. So I just turned that off. That's just me. And the second thing is, for this shot, I have a very simple 3-point lighting setup here that I want to cover. So if you're not familiar with 3-point lighting, you can look that up. There are plenty of references and resources on it, but I'll give you a really quick breakdown of it. If I go to my overhead view here, or my top view, I will demonstrate it through discs. All right. And it's a really simple setup, very, very standard for, especially in photography with Rembrandt lighting and whatnot, for portraits, but also in cinematography, of course. And that is how I actually approach my scenes in general. Is I like to think of it from more of a cinematography approach. And I mean, because, work in film, TV, and that's just kind of my world. So photography as well, for sure, is what you want to keep in mind. So looking up those references, looking up scenes from films, different lighting references, color keys, color scripts, all that stuff. Definitely great resources. So I would recommend doing that. But with 3-point lighting, you have, as far as the setup goes, 3 points of lighting, right? So you've got a key, which is your main light in the scene. You've got a fill, which helps fill in the shadows and darker areas within the scene. And then you've got a backlight or a rim light, which helps pop the subject that you're trying to focus on. It pops it out of the background, out from the background. So you get either the rim light, depending on what kind of approach you're trying to take with style. So this is the general setup here, right? So you've got a key, fill, back. I mean, this could switch. I mean, this could be back, and then this could be a key and fill, and then the key could be over here, and this could be the fill over here. You know, you could just have a 2-point setup and not have a back, and just have, you know, a really stylized lighting setup here from the side. So there are a lot of things that you can do with that approach. You know, taking lights out, adding lights in, but the basic setup is the 3-point lighting there that I just was showing you. So with that said, what I want to do is I have my 3-point lighting setup here. I've got a key, a fill, and a back, but I haven't touched any settings. All I've really done is gone in here and I have set the lights in the scene where I want them. So if I go to my perspective view and I turn on my key light, you'll see that my key light is right here. Okay. So I'm putting it in the same place that I was showing you just a minute ago with the discs. And our key light is pretty hot right now, but we haven't changed any settings. So all we've done is place it. So I have my key light, my fill light, and my backlight. And with those set, what I want to do is I want to stop down the exposure. Now, I like to use the exposure first because, you know, think again, real world settings. If I was using an actual camera, I would stop down the exposure or increase the exposure to get the shot that I want. So with that said, if I just use my key light and I go into here, I'm going to stop this down to about 2. And there we go. Now we're starting to get some more information here. And then for our fill light, that's obviously way too hot. So I'm going to bring that down to about, I'm going to stop it down to about 5. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now we're getting shadows. And you don't want to, with the fill light, you don't, I might actually, you know, I'm going to go down to 6 because you don't want to overdo it. And then with my backlight or my rim light, that's helping pop it out from the background there. So I am going to stop that down about 1. And that should be good where that's at right there. So that's looking pretty good. But one other thing I wanted to cover here really quick before we jump or dive too deep here is how I actually place lights. And I'll just show you that really quick. If I create a new light, we'll just make a new area light. And I will call this example. And we name our lights because we like to be clean and organized, and it's just good housekeeping. So with our example light, it always creates it in the origin. So instead of going out here and, you know, fiddling with this and saying, okay, I think it needs to be up over here and pull it, pushing and saying, all right, well, okay, I need to rotate it and face it the right direction here. You could put a target object. You could tell it to target this specifically, but then you don't have the freedom to move it. You have to constantly turn the target off and on and all that. So the way that I like to approach this is I like to, I'm going to zero everything out here, go back to the origin. I like to go here and use selected object as camera. So that way I'm actually looking through the point of view of the light. So now if I hit render, it's looking, this is locked to this camera view. So now I get the real-time feedback and update of my light itself, right? Which is really cool because, and we'll stop this down again because it's too bright. Go down to 2. So now I'm getting the real-time feedback of me just looking through like I would normally navigate in my Cinema 4D scene. I'm getting the real-time feedback of this. Now, one thing you don't want to do is forget that you have this on, because you could get it set up the way you want and then you forget to go back to your default camera afterwards because you're still looking through the light. You forget to go back to your default camera, you move it, and then you're kind of hosed because if you move it too many times, you don't know what the right position was. You can always go up here to view, undo view, but you know that only gets you so far. So be sure you have it, place it where you want it, and get in the habit of going up to camera and then go back to the default camera so you don't have to, you know, go back to previous versions or backed up versions. So going back to our 3-point lighting setup here, I'm going to turn this back on. So this is where the first tip comes into play. If you have not worked with temperatures, then this is going to help tremendously in your lighting skills. It's going to help take it to the next level for sure, just with this tip alone, because this helps mimic real world lighting. So if I have a little cheat sheet here with temperature, this is the Kelvin scale. And if you look here in our light, we have a temperature option. Okay. So I'm going to choose temperature for all of these. And if I look at my sheet here, we get the warm and the cool options here in our Kelvin scale, right? So we want to use that to our advantage. And this is based off of real world units. So this is what I prefer to use. So you can find this little cheat sheet or other cheat sheets for this purpose if you need to reference it. But I want a warm light for this key light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to make this one 2700 because I want to get down in the warm. Let's see, maybe 3200 because we don't want it to be too crazy warm. 3200 is pretty good. And for my fill light and my backlight, I want those to be cool because we want the juxtaposition of the warm and the cool lights, right? So with our warm light, we have the key light as our warm light. Our fill light and our backlight, we want those to be cool. So I'm going to make those 8000. And I'm going to refresh. And so now, if I just go from color to temperature, you'll be able to see the difference. Here's color, just regular 3-point lighting. And there's nothing wrong with this either. Nothing wrong with this at all. But it can always go one step further. If there's one thing I've learned, when you think that it's done, you can always go one step further to help improve your work. So if we go from this to this is a much more real world scenario here. And I'm actually going to bring this fill light in. So now we're getting the nice cool tones, right? Mixed with the warm key light. So that's tip number one. Using temperature in your lights is going to help you tremendously. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is light maps. If you have not used light maps, this is definitely going to help as well. So if I go to my key light, this is taking temperature essentially and taking it one step further. So I'm going to pause my render real quick. And I have a pack of light maps that I have purchased off of an artist from ArtStation. And he's done an amazing job putting all this together. So these are all the lights that you get in this pack. And you get, bounce reflectors, you get soft boxes, you get softbox reflectors, cold warms, you get umbrellas, umbrella reflectors. So you get a bunch of these things, right? These are spotlight light maps, which are great. So the great thing about this reference is it shows you what it looks like if you stop it down, right? It's -3, -6, like I was talking about just a minute ago. And then what the source light map looks like if you overexpose it or expose it up, boost the exposure up to 3 stops. So, or up 3 stops from the baseline. So this is a great reference to have as well. And I'll put a link to this as well. But the artist, this artist here, Sergei Alienkov, hopefully I said that correctly. He put a lot of time into this, and it definitely pays off to purchase a pack like this. 1, because you help support the artist, and 2, it's definitely a good resource to have. So I would highly recommend this. I'll put the link in the description. So with that said, if we go to our key light, and I'll just solo this key light. Right now, if we look at our light, and I'll get out of the camera view here, and I make my light visible. Let's go to our details. Or sorry, it's actually in here. Visible. Okay, so we can see the light itself, right? So if I go into my key light and I choose, go back to color here. If you're on temperature, just change it back to color. And that opens up your texture slot. So you go into textures, and then you go to your light maps. And this is the kit that I showed you just a minute ago. And what I want for this one is I want the warm softbox. So I'm going to go to the softbox warm right here. Open that up. And if I hit render, you can see that that changed to the actual map of that softbox. Now I'm going to stop this down. And you can see that that texture is actually on that light, which is so cool because you're using a real world light that has a high dynamic range in it, right? So you're basically getting the light information of those lights, which is really cool. So I'm going to put this back to 2, and I'm going to go back to our camera view here. And we now see that we get the lighting information from that light, which is really cool. So I'm going to go actually stop it down to maybe 3. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my fill on my back. So with our fill light, we want to go with a cool light. So we're going to change this to color, go to our texture, and we want to do reflection cold. Now you can also just drag the textures in here as well. So it depends on, what you want to do. I could just go into here and select the texture, and let's see, what is that? Reflection. Oh, that's reflection cold. We don't want that. We want softbox cold. Here we go. Softbox cold. Boom. Just drag it in there, and there you go. And then our backlight, the same thing. I'm going to use the same texture, so I can actually just copy this and go into here, paste it, and there you go. So, and I'm actually going to bring this fill light down to 6. Whoops, that is not 6. Down to 6. There we go. So the fill light's doing, it's doing its job. It's filling in the shadows, but this is giving us much better information than just changing to the temperature itself. Because if you change it to just the temperature, you're getting pretty much just a full color of what the temperature is, which helps for sure. It's much better than just keeping it at default. But at the same time, this is a huge step up from that. So this is really going to help you in a lot of situations and scenarios. You can also put a plane with like the little bounce reflector there. Tons of stuff you can do with this. So this is already looking really good. Now, one other thing I want to cover is and kind of in the same vein as the light maps, and this is tip number 3, is gobos. Now, gobos are more of a stylistic choice depending on what your scene is or what your scene calls for, what your shot calls for. But gobos are awesome. I love using them. So what we want to do is, first of all, we want to get let's go ahead and light our stage here. And one thing that I wanted to just kind of a little bonus tip here, if you add in a dome light and you set it to, you stop it down to, let's say, about 2, right? Under here in the color, you can also use temperature as well. It doesn't have a temperature slider or temperature section where you just choose it on the dome lights, but it does have an option to choose the color from a temperature. So if I go here and I change this temperature to, we want this to be cool, so we'll do 8,000, which is a good number. I'm going to turn all the other lights off but the ambient light here. This is our ambient light, okay? This is a huge help because this really helps fill in those areas, because nothing in life is 100% dark, right? If I turn this light off, this is not real life, right? So adding this ambient light into your scene is also really going to help, and you'll see right now what I mean by that. So if I have I'm going to turn this backlight off actually and turn my stage light on because I have the stage back here lit. If I turn my ambient light on, you'll see how much that fills in, and it almost feels like a warm day, right? Like an outside shot. If I turn my ambient light off, this isn't bad, but the shadows are a lot more dense. The information that you're getting, it could always be better, right? We say CBB, right? Could be better. So what I want to do is I want to turn this ambient light on to help fill in some of that information and just give us a really nice, cool light, right? Juxtaposed to in contrast to the warm light. So that being said, getting into Gobos, what we want to do is we want to take our Gobo light, and you want to make sure that when using a Gobo texture, that you are using it on a spotlight. And if you don't know what a Gobo texture is, basically it's a texture, it's a map, a light map, similar to a light map, and it's just a black and white texture that mimics objects occluding light to create shadows. Okay, so, and you can also use actual objects to 3D objects to create those Gobos, but for now we're just going to cover the Gobo textures. So if I go into my Gobo light that I have set here, and I go to my actually I have it pulled up here, let's do that. I have a set of Gobos here. This is from Grayscale Gorillas Plus library, and if you see here, they're just a bunch of different light maps or maps that are created to mimic real world areas where you would actually be getting light coming in. You've got caustics here, tons of stuff, really cool stuff. But right now, we'll just do a simple window. Okay, so I'm going to grab my window. I'm going to bring it in and just pull it into the texture slot of the Gobo light. So now you see we're getting that light information. So if I go to my light here and do our little trick from before, so now I'm looking at the actual light, I can adjust it to get that really cool stylized lighting, right? So now we're starting to get some really cool stuff. And I'm going to turn off actually this fill light and maybe even our key light. Yeah, there we go. Now we're starting to get some really cool stuff. So, because I just want to showcase this Gobo a little more. So with this, there are a lot of things that you can do, but let me just show you a few little tricks. When you have a Gobo in here, you may say, okay, well, that's a little too sharp. And you may think, all right, well, I'll pull it back. Well, as you pull it back, your intensity is going to lower, right? And your Gobo is going to get a lot wider because, I mean, that just makes sense. You get further away from the actual source of the light, you're not going to have, the intensity of the light itself. So if you want your shadows of the Gobo to be a little more diffused, what we want to do is you go into Gobo and you go into details here. You may just crank up the softness and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to pump up the softness. Let's just go to like 20. Let's go crazy. Nothing happens. Because all you got to check this little box right here. Softness affects Gobo. Boom. There we go. So now if I have it at 2, you see now as I start to dial this down and up, we get the difference in the softness there. So this will also really help with your scenes because it helps break up that, that harsh edge there a little bit. So let's just maybe put it at 1. And that's looking pretty good. Let's throw another one in here just to see what we got. So I'm going to, let's do one of these window ones here. Throw this one in here. Yeah, that's nice. That's actually pretty occluded. There we go. That one's actually pretty occluded. So let's throw a different one in here. We'll just do one of these ones with the thinner blinds here. There we go. So you can get some really cool stuff, some really nice looks here. You can also get more intense, get further away. So you can see the potential to do a lot of really cool stuff with this, right? So that's another thing that's really going to help with your lighting in your scenes. And the last thing that I want to cover is I want to talk about HDRIs. Now, so many people think that if you can just throw an HDRI in a scene and you're done, you call it a day, right? So if I go here and I do a dome light, come in here and let's name it Good Housekeeping. And let's see, I go to my textures. One of my favorite ones to use is this Shanghai Riverside. Throw that in there. It's from Polyhaven. And let's hit render. That looks great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it at all whatsoever. But one thing I would highly recommend is using lights in conjunction with your HDRI light. Using an HDRI light is not an end all be all, right? It's just another light for you to be able to, it's like a good baseline. And sometimes it does work. Sometimes maybe that's what you're going for, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But a lot of times there might be scenarios where you want to add in a light to help pop, like I was saying, to pop the subject off of the background, to help tell the story. It all depends on I mean, there's different scenarios, but what I would do with this is, this looks great, but I would actually just go in here and I would just turn on my backlight. And of course, bring that down because it's way overstuffed. So I'll bring it down about 4 maybe. So now we're getting some extra information here, right? That helps pop this, bring attention to the subject, and helps pop it off the background there a little bit. And I'm actually going to bring this up a little more to maybe 3. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look through the backlight. Okay. Kind of go in here and place this to where it's not facing, not lighting up the stage so much as it is the subject. So if I turn that off and turn it on, see, that really helps. And another trick too is actually stopping down your HDRI, the exposure of your HDRI. So go to -1. So because it's meant to be used as you can use it as, you know, a one-off if you want to do that, especially if you're under the gun and you're just kind of, you know, jamming to get stuff out, style frames or whatever, kick out some concepts. But in general, it helps to I usually just stop this down to about 1. And if it's not going to be necessarily my main source of lighting, because you could even still use a key light in conjunction with an HDRI, but your HDRI most likely will be your key light. And you can just use a back or fill to help light your scene and help support the HDRI as well. So that is where I want to leave it for today. But just remember, when using lights, you know, using your temperature, changing it from color to temperature, using your light maps, using your Gobos, your HDRIs, all of that stuff, it's only going to help in the long run. And supplementing your HDRI with other lights, I can assure you it's only going to help you up your lighting game when you do these things. And it's always just a good practice to have those in mind as you're lighting your scenes as well. So, all right, guys, I'm going to leave it there, and we'll catch you on the next one. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys found something in here that was beneficial. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you guys like, or if you want to see content like this. Maybe there's something I didn't cover that you want to see more in-depth coverage of. Hit me up. Let me know about those things. Be sure to do the YouTube thing, smoosh that like bubble, hit the notification bell, and all that good stuff. We'll catch you in the next one. And as always, work hard, stay humble. Oh hey, didn't see you there. This is the end of the video, so I'm gonna end this now and do all the YouTube things. Don't forget, work hard, stay humble. I'm really bad at this. Maybe I'll get better one day. We're all just faking it. No one knows what they're doing. All the batteries to my mouse are dead. Technical difficulties. That was it.